This is the second part of my chat with Deepa, and the focus of this chat is on the building safety crisis. And if you want to find out more about the crisis after watching this video, then I'll provide some useful links down in the description to this video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, say bye, Maya. Say bye. 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 Say bye up here. Say bye. Say bye. Bye. Okay. Let's talk about that. So your situation has changed. I mean, you bought your place in 2010 as a single woman,
Yeah.
and since since then you've got married, you've had children, so your situation has changed. And I guess ideally what you would like to do is probably sell your place and maybe move to a bigger place, because as you said, it's 2 bedrooms, and you have 3 children.
I have 3 children.
Yeah,
They
three
are 2
children.
and 6.
Yeah.
I have a daughter and 2 sons, and they're currently sharing a room.
Which
Now, at the moment, their cot, which is all we can afford, or a slightly bigger cot, which is all we can afford at the moment, fit into that one room. But there's no space for anything else. There's no space for toys. There's no space for a bookshelf or, just a play area for them. The play area is the hallway and our lounge room. There's no space for them to do their schoolwork except the dining table. So yes, we are outgrowing this place very, very fast. And ideally, we need to move. I would have moved um, a couple of years ago, but I was heavily pregnant with our 3rd child, and we did consider it at that point. But I thought I just can't handle the stress of moving, as well as looking after 2 children and carrying another. So I thought, let's wait. And when we were ready to move, I realized that we can't. We are scuppered by the fact that we don't have an EWS certificate. And that's what all lenders are requiring at the moment, to be able to provide buyers mortgages on flats that are affected by the cladding crisis, which is now not just the cladding crisis, it's now a building safety crisis, because it applies to so much more than just cladding.
Maybe you can just talk about like what the problem is with the EWS1 form, because people might not see what the problem is. They'll probably think, all right, if you need this form to sell, why don't you just get the form done and sell and sort of move on with your life? Like, if that's the only problem you have to deal with, like, why not just get the form and move on? But yeah, maybe tell us what the problem is.
You're looking at around about 700,000 flats that are affected who will need an EWS form. The form certifies that the external wall, which is the cladding panels, the insulation, any fire breaks, that sort of thing, are safe and in place. However, it requires a qualified engineer to carry this out, and there aren't enough of them in the country to be able to cover all 700,000 buildings. 700,000 flats. So you end up with engineers who are reluctant to do this because they are aware of what could happen. So the engineer also needs to have some professional indemnity insurance, and if they don't have that, they won't carry out the survey. So initially we had looked, and the pool of engineers was about 300 people. It's now down to 150 who have the insurance, but 150 engineers can't get round to 700,000 flats and provide these certificates as soon as you need them. The other problem is that because of there being so few engineers, the prices are very high. So you're looking at an average of £40,000 per block to have an engineer come out and survey your flat, which in essence you will pay through your service charges. The other problem is that you cannot, as a leaseholder or resident, request for it to be done or engage anyone to come and do that survey for you. Your freeholder has to do it. So if the freeholder is willing and wants to do it, they can do it. If they don't, they simply don't. There's no legal obligation. We've been told, my housing association and other housing association residents have been told, that it could be up to 10 years before you get your certificate. I mean, my kids could be teenagers before we're able to have this certificate, which allows us to move on. we've already had our remediation work done.
Hmm.
So our housing association, as soon as that awful fire happened in Grenfell, we had fire risk assessors out here, and they assessed that we had the same combustible cladding, insulation, and backing as Grenfell, and it was uncertified product, and it needed to be removed. So it was removed, and it was replaced, and the work took about a year and a bit to complete. But by middle of 2018, we had a fully recladded, re-insulated building, as well as some other internal fireworks as well. So ideally, you'd have thought that we'd be first on the list to get this certification because we've already had the work done. So, the Housing Association should have just contacted an engineer straight away and said, come and do it. And that hasn't been done. The certificate was introduced in December 2019. And since then, there have just been more and more blocks have started putting their hands up saying, we've got fire problems, we've got cladding issues. And the more blocks that start being added to the list, the longer it's going to take us to get this certificate.
Do you know whether the cost of remediation is going to fall on you as a shared owner?
The Housing Association have said we will not be charging this block for the work that was done historically. That doesn't mean that if there are law changes, at the moment the fire safety bill is due to pass in Parliament, as is the building safety bill, and there is a clause in there to say that historical works and current works can be passed down to leaseholders through their service charges. So at the moment, housing associations are saying we won't, but they may change their tune if these bills are passed and passed not in our favour. I looked at some stats, and I did have a look at the London Council did a parliamentary briefing. This was a couple of years ago, so they had spoken to the boroughs, the London boroughs, who have high-rise blocks, sorry, and they had estimated that cladding costs just that 1 year was going to be about 53 million. Now, the number of flats that they had looked at, they looked at 38 blocks. So if you're looking at an expected or a quoted cost of 53 million for 38 blocks, that's 1.4 million a block. So if it cost 1.4 million, let's say an average for my block to be remediated between our 20 flats, that's nearly £70,000 per flat.
People might say, well, didn't the government announce that they're going to be covering this cost for residents? That didn't they say that leaseholders, shared owners won't have to foot this bill?
Yes, it's quite a complex situation, and it's very discriminatory. I mean, my words are that it's quite discriminatory. So if you look at the 5.1 billion that the government have put forward in the Building Safety Fund, which you have to apply for to be eligible for, it discriminates on height. So you've got the 18-meter threshold. It also discriminates on material. It will only cover cladding. Cladding is just the aluminium panel, but what's behind it is insulation. So if your insulation needs replacing as well, which is very, very highly likely considering Kingspan sold their product to most of the blocks in this country, you will be forking out for the insulation and the membrane behind it to be replaced. If you are successful, you are also not allowed to get that money until you have money to cover the rest of the work, which is the cost of the insulation and the membrane and any fire breaks that are needed. But if leaseholders can't come up with that money, the works won't go ahead and you won't get that grant. It's very, very, it's been put together in such a discriminatory manner, but spun so well that it looks like the government have solved the building safety crisis, when in actual fact, all they're doing is stalling, and it's not helped at all.
In response to this, I know that you're working with some campaigners, End Our Cladding Scandal and the UK Cladding Action Group, I think they're called.
Yeah.
You're working with them, or you're supporting their efforts in trying to get a fire safety bill by, I can't remember, is it I can't remember the guy's name.
McPartland-Smith amendment.
McPartland-Smith amendment. Um, could you just sort of talk about what that amendment is
Sure.
advocating for, what it's trying to, how it's trying to protect leaseholders and shared owners?
So the fire safety bill had no clauses to protect leaseholders from incurring any financial costs, even though the government for many years had been saying leaseholders should not be paying for this. So the Lords had put together an amendment called the McPartland-Smith Amendment. It's supported by the House of Lords. It was created by Stephen McPartland and Royston Smith, who were Conservative MPs. They have put forward the clause, or so let's stick to the word amendment. They've put forward the wording amendment to make sure that leaseholders do not get past any remediation costs for fire safety, building safety works through service charges. So that has twice been to the Commons and it's been twice rejected. It's now gone back to the House of Lords for further review. I believe that it will be looked at again after the Easter recess. And we just hope that the Conservatives vote to look after us. The disadvantage of it not going through will mean that the financial loans that have been put forward by the government will be forced upon us. So you can't choose whether to take it out or not. It will be forced on you. And yes, it's been capped at £50 a month. Yes, it's a very low interest rate, something like 1.5%. And yes, it's very long term. But what happens is that cost will affect your property. So you, in essence, pay for it either through the loan or through your house price, your flat price. I do believe what will happen is that the amount of the loan will be taken, or will, just through market conditions, will reduce your home price. And I think that that's what's going to cause a lot of people to go into negative equity and potentially cause bankruptcies, because what you'll have is people are already seeing bills of, say, £115,000 for remediation works, but their flats are worth maybe £80,000. So you're already in negative equity by the amount of work that needs to be done. People will just hand back the keys to the banks and say, I want no more of this. We're not the only country to have these problems. So Australia, there are 6 states in Australia, and the Victorian state were able to solve this. I mean, it's not completely fixed, but they started working on it as soon as they had their first high-rise tower fire. They put together a task force. They covered the costs, and then they went chasing the people who were guilty. They did at one point float the ideas of loans to leaseholders, but nobody took that up. So then they realized there's no appetite for that, and it is wholly unfair. Then they went chasing after the construction industry and those who are guilty. And what it's allowed people to do is, it doesn't mean that you are trapped where you are until this gets sorted. So you're not living in limbo like we are in England. You are able to still sell and move, remortgage, and do what you need to do, because there are assurances from the government that this is going to be sorted.
I don't think people realise as well. I think because maybe it's not happening to them, they're not, directly affected by the cladding scandal. They don't think that it's going to be something that affects them. But you talked about how many 700,000 flats that are affected by this.
That is only an estimate. These are government figures. That's only an estimate. The government themselves don't know the right number.
So it could be even higher. If these properties are not allowed onto the market, and the people within these properties are not allowed to sell, and that's a big chunk of the property market. That's going to have an impact on the housing market. So if this problem isn't resolved properly, it's going to have a knock-on effect for everyone else. Although we're not feeling it at the moment, it is going to be a problem that that ends up affecting us all. And I don't think people actually realise that. I think
No, there are. I mean, it's starting to hit house sales. So people are slowly, very slowly waking up to the fact that, well, why didn't my house sale go through? Why has everything just crashed? Oh, because further down the chain, there was a flat that wasn't able to sell. And that's it. It's broken the entire chain. Eventually, there will be a housing market crash if this isn't fixed. What's masking this at the moment is the stamp duty exemption. Um, and a bit of COVID. But as you start seeing more normality get back to the housing market, you will see house sales are falling through. So 4 or 5 people up the chain will be impacted by this who haven't got a clue what's going on right now, or think that that the problem is sorted.
So, if people want to support the efforts to sort of end the cladding scandal and the building safety crisis, how can they do that? How can they support this campaign?
The campaigns have done a lot of work so far to ensure that all of the MPs are aware of this. The problem is that many MPs, particularly the Conservative MPs in areas where there aren't that many high-rise blocks, believe that they aren't affected, and because they're not seeing these these issues within their constituencies, they believe that there isn't, and that's why they're voting it down to try and support us. So ideally, what we need is many people writing to their MPs to say that this is a big problem, because if if the MPs themselves don't recognise it as a problem, they can't force any change, and they're the ones with the power to force the legislation that will stop people going bankrupt, that will stop the housing market crash.
Mm.
If you go to the End Our Cladding Scandal website, which is, hopefully you can provide a link to that.
Yeah, provide a link in the description to the website.
Okay, so go to the website, and on there is a section that has template letters. All you need to do is click on the one that is for friends and family, and that will it will write a template letter to your MP. So there is already one created. Now, if you know anyone who is an affected leaseholder, then you can actually personalize it and add something about their personal situation. But other than that, you just put in your postcode, it identifies your MP, it sends off the letter to them. And this is what they're not getting enough of. They're not seeing enough of this. So the more people that can write to their MPs, the better it will be for everybody.
Yeah, it is really easy. It's really quick. I did it myself. It takes 2 minutes, if that. You just put in your postcodes. It comes up with your MP, and you can read. I mean, you can read the letter as well. It's not something that gets sent on your behalf without you being able to read it. You can read it, make sure you're happy with it. You can edit it if you wish, and
Yeah.
it sends an email to your MP, and it copies an email to you as well, so you have a copy for your record.
And if you do get a response from them, I would really like to see what the response is,
Mhm,
because there are many MPs are sending back a template response as well. But
mhm.
there are some who could probably use a little persuasion. So if they come back with something that's not a template response, we could probably come up with something to go back to them with. So don't, if they come back and say, I'm sorry, I don't support it, don't take that as your last answer. We can always provide something more.
And I'll link your Twitter handle down in the description as well. So if anybody does have any response from their MP and they want to share that with Deepa or anyone else that's supporting this campaign, I'll leave links to the main Twitter sort of handles down in the description to this video.
So I have also set up for my housing association a residents group, particularly to discuss EWS one problems in cladding, but also for other issues that you may crop up. For example, we've recently had a case about maintenance and the complaints that around that. But do feel free to connect to that group on Facebook. They are also on Twitter, and we look forward to hearing from you. Hopefully, the more people we can get together, the better support we can provide for everyone.
And that's called the Peabody group. You're calling it?
It's Peabody Cladding Residents.
Peabody Clay Residents, and I'll provide a link to the different pages, the Twitter page, the Facebook page,
Thank you.
down in the description to this video as well. But yeah,
Great.
thank you, Deepa, for sharing your story.